Hello, brilliant student. Welcome to Topic 1 of your CRS exam preparation series. Today, we are discussing the sovereignty of God. This topic appears in your exams every single year. In this lesson, you will learn the meaning of sovereignty, the 4 key attributes, 3 biblical examples, and how to answer exam questions. Let us begin. First, what does sovereignty mean? The word sovereign means supreme ruler. When we apply this to God, it means God is the supreme ruler over everything that exists. Nothing happens without His knowledge or permission. Nothing is outside His control. No one is more powerful than Him. No one can overrule His decisions. No one can advise Him because He already knows everything. This is a comforting truth. If God is not sovereign, then something else is in control. Maybe fate, maybe luck, maybe random chance. But the Bible teaches clearly that God is sovereign. The prophet Isaiah wrote that God declares the end from the beginning. He says, "My counsel shall stand, and I will accomplish all my purpose." There are 4 key points to remember about God's sovereignty. Examiners love these 4 points. If a question asks you to define the sovereignty of God, give these 4 points, and you will earn full marks. Write them down in your notebook. 1. God is self-sufficient. This means He needs nothing and no one. Before God created the universe, He existed alone. He was complete. He lacked nothing. He did not create humans because He was lonely. He created everything because He wanted to share His love. God does not depend on us. We depend on Him for every breath. In Acts, Paul says that God is not served by human hands as if He needed anything. He gives everyone life and breath. 2. God is all-powerful. The Bible word is omnipotent. This means God can do anything consistent with His nature. He cannot lie or sin, but everything else He can do. No force can stop Him. No army can fight Him. When God speaks, things happen. He said, "Let there be light," and light appeared. He said, "Let the dead rise," and Lazarus came out of the tomb. Nothing is too hard for the Lord. 3. God is all-knowing. The Bible word is omniscient. This means God knows everything. He knows the past, present, and future. He knows what you are thinking. He knows what questions will appear in your exam. He knows every star by name. He knows every hair on your head. Nothing is hidden from God. The psalmist said, "Such knowledge is too wonderful for me." 4. God is everywhere present. The Bible word is omnipresent. This means there is no place where God is not. You cannot run away from God. The psalmist asked, "Where can I go from your spirit? If I go to heaven, God is there. If I make my bed in hell, God is there." Jonah tried to run from God. He boarded a ship going the opposite direction, but God sent a storm and a great fish. Jonah learned his lesson. God is everywhere. Now let me explain why these 4 points matter. If God were not self-sufficient, He would need something from us, but He does not. He loves us freely. If God were not all-powerful, we could not trust His promises. But He can do anything He says. If God were not all-knowing, we could not trust His guidance. But He knows the end from the beginning. If God were not everywhere present, there would be places where we are alone. But He is always with us. These 4 attributes are practical truths. When you understand that God is sovereign, you stop worrying. You trust Him completely. Now let us continue with our 3 biblical examples. Now let us look at 3 biblical examples of God's sovereignty. These are the examples that examiners ask about most frequently. Master these 3 examples, and you will be ready for any question on this topic. The first example is creation from Genesis chapters 1 and 2. In the beginning there was nothing. No light, no land, no stars, no plants, no animals, no humans. Just God. Then God spoke. He said, "Let there be light," and light appeared. He said, "Let there be dry land," and the ground rose up. He said, "Let there be living creatures," and fish filled the seas, and birds filled the sky. He said, "Let us make man in our image," and Adam was formed from the dust. Here is what you need for your exam. God created everything from nothing. This is called creation ex nihilo. God did not use pre-existing materials. He did not need help. He simply spoke, and things appeared. This shows his absolute sovereignty. No one else can do this. Only God. God also created order out of chaos. The earth was formless and empty, but God brought order. Day 1, light. Day 2, sky. Day 3, land and plants. Day 4, sun, moon, and stars. Day 5, fish and birds. Day 6, land animals and humans. This shows God is a God of order. God also created humans in his own image. This is unique. Only humans received this honor. This shows humans have special value and responsibility. A common exam question asks you to discuss the sovereignty of God from the creation story. Your answer must have 3 paragraphs. First, God created alone. Second, God created order. Third, God created humans in his image. Here is a sample answer. God's sovereignty is clearly demonstrated in creation. First, God created everything alone with no assistance. This shows he is self-sufficient. Second, God created order out of chaos, showing he is a God of purpose. Third, God created humans in his own image, showing he gives humans unique dignity. Therefore, creation proves God is absolutely sovereign. Write that sample answer down. The second example is the story of Joseph from Genesis chapters 37 to 45. Joseph was Jacob's favorite son. His brothers hated him. Joseph had a dream of 11 stars bowing to him. His brothers understood he would rule over them. One day, they sold Joseph as a slave for 20 pieces of silver. He was taken to Egypt. Joseph lost everything: his family, his home, his freedom, but God was in control. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar. God blessed everything Joseph did. Then Joseph was falsely accused and thrown into prison. But even in prison, God was with him. Joseph interpreted dreams for the king's cupbearer and baker. 2 years later, the king of Egypt had a strange dream. Joseph was brought before the king. He interpreted the dream as 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. The king made Joseph the prime minister of Egypt. When the famine came, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt to buy food. They bowed to Joseph. They did not recognize him. Joseph finally revealed himself. His brothers were terrified. But Joseph said, Genesis chapter 50 verse 20, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." What does this teach about God's sovereignty? First, God's sovereignty is not stopped by human evil. The brothers sold Joseph into slavery, but God worked through their evil actions for good. Second, God's sovereignty works through suffering. Joseph suffered for 13 years, but God was preparing him for leadership. Third, God's sovereignty is always for good purposes. Joseph saved Egypt from famine and saved his own family from death. So Joseph proves God is sovereign even over human evil and suffering. The third example is the plagues of Egypt from Exodus chapters 7 to 12. The Israelites were slaves in Egypt for over 400 years. God sent Moses to demand their freedom. Pharaoh refused, so God sent plagues. The first plague turned the Nile to blood. The Nile was worshipped as a god. The second plague brought frogs. The frog goddess Hecht was defeated. The third plague brought gnats. The fourth brought flies. The fifth killed livestock. The sixth brought boils. The seventh brought hail and fire. The eighth brought locusts. The ninth brought darkness for 3 days. The sun god Ra was defeated. The 10th brought death to every firstborn in Egypt. After each plague, Pharaoh promised to let Israel go, but he changed his mind. Why? Because God was demonstrating his sovereignty. Exodus chapter 9 verse 16 says, I have raised you up for this very purpose, that I might show you my power. Each plague proved that the God of Israel is more powerful than all the gods of Egypt. There is no competition. God alone is supreme. Let me summarize what you have learned. Sovereignty means God is self-sufficient, all-powerful, all-knowing, and everywhere present. 3 examples. Creation shows God as the sole creator. Joseph shows God turning evil into good. The plagues show God's power over false gods. For your exam, always define sovereignty first, using the 4 key points. Then give at least 2 biblical examples. For each example, explain the story briefly, and then explain the lesson about God's sovereignty. Then write a short conclusion. Common mistakes include forgetting to define sovereignty, giving only one example, or just telling the story without explaining the lesson. Do not make these mistakes. See you in Topic 2.